Welcome to Around the Drafting Table, the show where we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to design and build a great home. I'm Kory Cox, the Oxford architect, and this channel is for homeowners who want to be informed, confident, and excited before they ever break ground. Today, we're talking about a role that most homeowners have never heard of, but almost everyone who's been through a build wishes they had: owner's representation. Joining me today is Cabot Woolley, owner's representative with Folston. Folston is new to the Salt Lake and Northern Utah market, but they bring deep experience helping owners navigate complex building projects, protect their interests, and keep teams aligned from day one. Cabot, thanks for pulling up a chair around the drafting table.
Thanks for having me, Kory. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
As have I. We've been punting ideas back and forth for a while now. We finally got a chance to sit down, so it's going to be great. So to begin, for homeowners building in Wasatch-backed communities like Talisker Club, Marcella Club, or Wasatch Peaks Ranch, what problem does an owner's representative actually solve?
Maybe I answer it this way. When I look at my clients, I have clients that typically fall into three different categories, and sometimes
Okay.
they're in all three. So the first is that someone that doesn't live here locally. Building for them is something that is hundreds or even thousands of miles away, and it's disquieting to not have that proximity to the project that you're spending a lot of money on, right? And
Right.
so me in my role, I'm at that proximity and the eyes and the ears and the boots on the ground for the client. So that's number one. Number two is the client that frankly just doesn't have time to do this themselves. A lot of people that are building homes at the level that are going in now in Park City and the Wasatch Back are they're people that are very busy, right? And so they are still running their own companies, and to take hundreds and even thousands of hours sometimes to manage the project or even be involved, not even manage it, but just to be involved in the project at a deeper level is something that many clients just simply can't do. And so I solve that for them. And then the third one is the person that's done this before and they say, I am never doing this again. And so they come out, they go around, they look at all the homes that are available on the market, and the one that they really want just isn't there and isn't available. So the only way for them to get what they want is to build. And so I'm the answer because they don't have to do it again. I'm there to take care of everything for them.
Yeah, perfect. There are so many decisions to make, some very big decisions and a lot of little decisions. So it's good to have someone like you along for the ride to help guide that process. Tell us about your background and Folston's work. What experience do you bring to that translates well to high-end remote or resort home projects?
Yeah, you mentioned Folston is relatively new, and that's true. I mean, Folston is a new company, but I
Hmm.
am not at all new to the area. My family has lived in Park City for 35 years. This is the place that I have always called home, and so I am a true local when it comes to the Wasatch Back. My background, interestingly, most recently has been working on the Marcella projects, which are a big project that's happening here on the Deer Valley East Village side of things, as well
Yeah.
as over on Jordanelle Ridge. And that's been a project that I've been heavily involved with. But prior to that, I was in commercial interiors, and so became very familiar with very large scale projects. And my entire career has been in luxury lifestyle in various uh, facets of that. And so
Hmm.
bringing the understanding of what luxury means to my clients is a really important thing because I think most clients would say that I'm more in tune, especially in paying attention to those very small details that make all of the difference than they are sometimes. And so
Yeah.
having bringing that luxury lifestyle background from what was a very large project scale at a very high end now to individual residences, it seems kind of like the perfect recipe to be able to deliver something really special for my clients.
Yeah. You mentioned luxury. Luxury is a concept that is fascinating to me because I think it has changed so much over time. In the current zeitgeist, what do you think luxury really is?
Well, I think luxury really is ultimately for an owner to be able to have the home that they want. For some people, that means a 2,000 square foot home. For some people, that means a 20,000 square foot home.
Yeah,
So I don't think it has anything to do with the size. What I
agreed.
really do think that is starting to make is more important than square footage is the quality of the finishes that are
Hmm.
going into many of these homes and the attention to detail. We've lived in a world, you, I know, have studied kind of historical architecture and the amount of detail that we are all in awe of when we go and we see beautiful, old buildings. It's not certainly not the same style, but the
Hmm.
same attention to detail in every part of the home is something that I think signifies luxury today. And so as those details are going into a home, they're small things that maybe aren't even noticeable initially. I was in a home last week where the ceiling panels throughout the entire home were actually sound dampening inserts. And
Yep.
so when you stepped into the home from the outside, there's just a palpable feeling. If you've ever stepped into a room that is treated specifically for sound, maybe a theater you've experienced that in, but you step from the outside into this home and there's this immediate calm that you feel. You can't explain why you feel that way. There's nothing that tells you, hey, this is sound treated in terms of the house. But that small detail was not a cheap thing to do, but makes a huge difference in the way that that home feels to the owner.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree that a right sizing a project is a huge deal, whether you're 2,000 or 20,000 square feet or somewhere in between. Very important conversation. And then acoustics, light, and thermal comfort are like the three invisible parts of architecture that really make the difference between going from a good piece of architecture to a great building.
You've said it better myself. So I think a lot of people, when they step into, let's talk about lighting, for example, that you just
Hmm.
mentioned. When someone steps into a project like this, typically, and I don't want to blanket, this across all architecture firms, but typically, the clarity around exactly what a client wants when it comes to a lighting plan isn't understood initially. And so the plans that are presented to the client are an electrical plan or a lighting plan or a reflected ceiling plan that will really help you get your building permit. It's just code specific and it's meant to kind of get you past that first hurdle. But the problem is that a lot of people, one, don't budget for a revision to that, and two, they assume that lighting plan that's initially laid out by an architect is the one that is recommended, and it's
Yeah.
just simply not the case, right? And so um, you have some architects that are very adept at lighting design and will work that into their plans, maybe as a secondary step, oftentimes.
Hmm.
But more than that, I often engage with lighting consultants who go through every single room to create these spaces that it's hard to describe. When you step into it, you don't know what's so special about it. And what is so special about it is that lighting that you have is very ambient, it's very natural, it changes with the time of day. And it's something that, again, I think you alluded to, that it's not something that someone really notices. And if they don't notice it, then it's done very, very well.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. And the last one you mentioned was temperature, which I completely agree as well, especially when we live up in the mountains
Hmm.
here. and the big swings and shifts that we have between summertime and wintertime. And that's really become even more dramatic. It used to be in Park City that the homes were built without any air conditioning.
Right.
And you would open the front door and you'd open the back door, and you'd have windows that were designed to open on both sides of the home, and you create this amazing draft that goes through the house. And our summers have gotten warmer, and that's not feasible. It's not possible like it was previously. And so I think you're right. That's the third leg of the stool that really creates something that is truly luxurious today.
Yeah. When I talk about thermal comfort, I'm alluding to like a larger conversation around just consistency of the interior environment, right? It's temperature, but also moisture. And up here in the mountains, oxygen level is another one that we sometimes bring in. People coming from Florida or wherever might want an oxygen system included.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point, and I think most people, unless they're building it at this level, may think, "What on earth you're talking about oxygen?" And the truth is
Mhm,
that you're seeing it more and more and more, where oxygen is actually pumped into the house, usually in specific rooms, most often into the bedroom, so that when
yeah.
people sleep at night, they are sleeping at oxygen levels that mimic being at sea level. So you're exactly right about that, that this is something that previously would have been like, "Are you crazy?" But the truth is that, again, you're seeing that more and more and more.
Yeah. Okay. Many of these homes take multiple years from design to completion. How do you help homeowners stay in control over these long timelines and changing market conditions during the design timeline?
Well, I think you're asking a question about two different things. One is the timeline specifically, uh, and two is the budget
Yeah.
that you're alluding to. And I think the timeline is really important. Obviously, if you're financing a home, that time is money. It's literal, and so making sure that we stay on time is very important. But you're right. We have a lot of situations right now where over a long period of time, where you estimate something originally, uh, the tariffs are a reality of our world today, and so
Who could
a
have
tariff.
predicted that years
That's
ago?
right. 2 years ago, when you were doing an estimate on a home, that's not something that you necessarily would have planned for. So my role in all of this is to really create clear communication between all of the partners that are helping build the home. So the architect, the general contractor, the trades, in many cases, the interior designer. We have engineers, we have steel producers. So there are a lot of people that become involved in a project at a very detailed level.
Yeah.
And as we look at those teams, I think one of the things that an owner uh, should be leery of is escalating prices. And I'm not beholden to anyone on that entire team except to the homeowner. That's all that I pay attention to, is their interest. And
I think
so,
that's a really important point to note. I mean, I almost want to underline that for everyone listening in.
yeah, thank you. And so everything that I do every single day is for the owner from their perspective. And we set early on, what is priority? Is it quality? Is it budget? Is it timeline? Or is it a mix of all of those things? Typically, it's a mix of all of those things, which is hard to achieve. But that said, when costs are escalating, I dive in. I do a lot of competitive research on certain things that I'm being told, hey, this cost is going up, and I really take the time to research that on behalf of the client so that they can feel comfortable that, hey, people aren't just raising prices because they hear that tariffs are coming. But I actually go through on a monthly basis and review all of the invoices and draws and make sure that we are paying market rate and that we're taking an opportunity of chances to pre-order materials when we know that something will come up. So paying attention to all of those details and working closely with the team
Yeah.
on those is really a central role that I have.
Yeah. Cost estimation is kind of one of those, I don't want to call it central to the design process, but it's a really important sort of load-bearing element of the full design process.
I think it's a
Um,
really
and
good
then
way.
having, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think that it's a really good way to describe that. And again, going back, I think when we talked about architects specifically, I have seen just this week, I've seen for a very large, let's say a 10,000 square foot home, I've seen an architectural set, meaning the set of plans that the architect provides as, hey, this is my finished product that I'm giving to you. And I've seen a set that's 30 pages and I've seen a set that's 300 pages.
Yeah.
So when someone is engaging an architect, understanding what that scope of the plan set will be is really important, and it's because of the thing that you just raised. When a builder gets a plan set that's 300 pages as opposed to 30 pages, they are able to provide an estimate that is way more accurate than they can on an estimate of 30 pages
Right.
because they are just making guesses. If it's 30 pages, basically they're being told this is the size of the rooms that you should have, and this is the height of the ceilings, and in some cases they don't even have that.
Hmm.
And as they get that, it's really the builder figuring out how to build this design. Whereas again, certain firms will provide something that's almost, I describe it as kind of a Lego instruction set that
Yes,
you know
very much.
exactly how to build that building. And so you can get a lot better estimate when you have that level of detail, and you pay for that, right?
Mhm.
So what I
Absolutely.
find is that a lot of owners are surprised when they pay for something that is I'll call it a thin plan set,
Hmm.
because what ends up consistently happening is that they go over budget because the architect or the builder rather has done their best to estimate based on what they have,
Right.
but unless they've done 30 or 40 homes exactly like that, then it's really hard for them to estimate, and so the costs escalate dramatically.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have all of those details up front, those costs remain really in check because the builder is able to give you a lot more specificity around how much things are going to cost.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about like a thin set versus a more robust set. To me, a set of drawings is nothing more than a record of the decision-making process, right? So that thicker set of drawings is going to indicate that we've had a more robust process, that we've engaged with our team more, that more decisions have been made. And like you're alluding to, if the contractor sees that thinner set, they know that there's a lot of decisions that haven't been made. So they make some assumptions. They'll put a bunch of allowances in, and hopefully it's close, but they might not be. And the other part of that is we're then making those decisions during the construction process under the gun, and that can lead to its own set of problems.
Well, and the answer is it's 90% always that way, right? It's just the way that the construction works. It's an imperfect process.
It is. Yeah.
And again, these are custom homes that people are building. They've never been built before. Now, there's certain components of it that have been done over and over and over again,
Right.
but there are always surprises and always things that are unplanned that no one should be surprised by.
What does proactive coordination look like versus reactive problem solving on Wasatch Back projects?
Let me give you one example that I've run into that I think is a great example. I've been working on a couple of homes that are built right on a ski in, ski out slope of
Hmm. Yeah.
the Deer Valley Ski Resort. And went out one of these jobs. The first time I went out to look at the site, I saw that the ski resort was installing snow guns to make the snow so that these could be ski in, ski out. There's a path that passes right below the home, and these guns were being placed at about 20 feet away from the corners of the home.
Okay.
These are loud. I mean, they're very close to the run, and so that there's only a few places that they can put them, but these are really, really loud. So I asked the team, hey, what's the plan for the sound attenuation on the windows? And the answer was, well, we don't really have a plan for that. These are triple pane windows. They're coming in from Europe. And I said, well, I'd like to see what the sound rating on them is.
Yep.
So I got that sound rating. The sound rating was appropriate for a triple pane window, but it's certainly not going to block out the sound every single night as snow is being blown.
Yeah. I'm
And
curious, what was the decibel rating on those machines?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the decibel rating was on the machines, but anyone that's been there, I mean, they're really loud ones, and then there are loud ones. They're all loud.
Okay. Fair enough.
Enough that you're not going to sleep at night if that's sitting right outside your window. And so I said, you know what, we really need to go back and look at a soundproof window. And I realized that these are going to be more expensive, but I guarantee that no one's going to want to be in this house and stay overnight in this house once these things are going if we don't take care of that. So we were able to double the amount of sound attenuation that we had on the windows, and this is done through laminating the glass panes and then
Right.
adding
Yeah.
radon in between each of the panels. But we were able to double that, which is really significant. Now the price of that went up by 20 to 30% to put those type of windows in. So
Yeah.
here's an example, going back to your original question, like what's proactive versus reactive? Well, proactive is figuring out how we do that. And yes, our budget increased by 30% on these windows, but
So
I'm telling you,
30% just on the windows and just on the windows facing those machines. So it's not like
that's right.
30% of the overall price of the home, just
That's
a
exactly
little
right.
bump, really.
That's right. Versus ripping out those windows after the fact, if you realize them, it would have been 5 times as expensive
Yes. Yeah.
to redo for the entire window package.
Hmm.
So I think that communication, that early planning, getting together with the construction teams. Another good example is when people are putting automated window shades that are up in the ceiling that they want to disappear. They don't want to see them. They want it to be completely disappear. Well, that has to happen very, very early in the framing stage,
Yeah.
because we've got big motors, you have big rolls that are up in that ceiling and those have to contain it. And if you do that after the fact, you're either lowering the ceiling, which you don't want to do. You don't want to have a lower ceiling height, and
Yeah.
you
Very
don't.
unhappy surprise when that happens.
Right, right. Or you have them with a valance, which looks really kind of like an afterthought. And so
Hmm. Yeah.
these are examples of being proactive versus reactive. But a lot of times, the teams aren't in a position to be talking with each other all the time. And so I'm one of all the projects that I'm on, we have a weekly meeting with the builder, with the architect, with the interior designer, so that we all make sure that we're talking about all of those issues. We're hitting them way in advance.
Hmm.
And there's an open forum constantly, because something that may be really important to an interior designer, like having those shades hidden, may not be something that the builder is necessarily thinking about. They're just following plans in terms of what that ceiling needs to look like according to those plans. And so that planning is critically important.
What makes building in places like Victory Ranch or Glen Wild fundamentally different from a standalone custom home in regards to HOAs, design review committees, access, weather, etc.?
Yeah, I think one of the big differences, and it's not completely unique to here, but building in the mountains comes with its own set of challenges. Um, you build a roof typically to keep the rain and the air out,
Mhm.
but in very heavy snow years, it also has to hold tens of thousands of pounds of additional weight. And
Yeah.
that's
The
not
snow
some,
load is a massive consideration.
the snow load is a massive consideration. Then when all of that snow melts, we're dealing now with a lot of many more modern designs. So the snow doesn't necessarily naturally uh, drip off of a pitched roof. And so the planning for that snow melt and then where that water goes is also critically important.
Hmm.
We're not building in Arizona where you have a flat desert base that you're building on. We're building in mountains that have um, soft mud and clay in some places, and in other places, you know, dozens of feet of solid granite. And a lot of times you don't know until you start digging what's going to be there. And so these are all things that really make this environment unique, because you can't take a home that was designed for Palm Springs and just pick it up and place it here. You have a fluctuation in the temperature, so it gets very cold and it gets very warm. A lot of the homes today have a lot of glass. So, how is the home contracting and expanding during those times? This season is a really good example where we had summer temperatures 2 weeks ago and it snowed
Hmm.
last night, right?
Right.
And so, planning for all of that in the construction is critically important. And I think those are probably more than HOA issues or anything else, something that are very unique to building on the Wasatch Back.
Yeah. Dealing with soil conditions is one of those like really important things, particularly where many of these sites have pretty significant slopes, which is a really wonderful design challenge, and opportunity for us to capture more of an experience and views, et cetera. But um, when dealing with soils, we do a geotechnical report where an engineer will go out on site and they'll do core samples in different places on the site, and they try and capture a picture of what the soils are so that we know, and hopefully they're finding bedrock. Um, but as you say, sometimes that geotechnical report doesn't quite capture everything that we hope, right? Because it is just a little snapshot. So
That's
we get out on
exactly
site and we start digging, and the contractor will give me a call and say, "Hey, what we found doesn't quite match geotech, and we're going to have to do some additional work." And that's always an unfortunate call. But so we hope to find bedrock is what we really hope for.
It's true. And then I think the thing that's very frustrating to an owner, you can imagine, is when they're spending, and it's not a few $1,000s or tens of thousands of dollars. In many
Could be
cases, it's
hundreds.
hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars to resolve these issues. And that's really frustrating because no one comes and says, "Wow, look at that beautiful excavation on your home," right?
Right.
You don't get anything necessarily for that except a stable home, which of course you have to have.
Which is
But
very important. We definitely want to
yeah,
have that.
it's frustrating where you think that things might be okay, and you'd love to have a few $100,000 to spend on furniture, for example,
Hmm.
upgrade your furnishings inside rather than spending it on retaining walls and more excavation.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking forward to this next question. What's one assumption homeowners should let go of before starting a mountain home build?
This is a really good question, but I think that one of the things that they should let go of is that everything can go according to plan. And I think a lot of people, walk into a situation hearing horror stories about things taking a much longer or budgets going way higher than they had originally planned. I think that's true. I think generally speaking, things can go off plan pretty rapidly. And we've talked about many examples already during our conversation here. But I think that one of the things that I try to bring to the table uh, is an understanding of how we are going to stick to that budget and creative ways that the teams can work together to stay on budget. So the assumption that people make is that they should just let go of is that things are going to go according to plan.
Yeah.
The reality is that things are going to change all the time. But the assumption that what I try to, in terms of bring that assumption back so that they can kind of keep that close, if you will, is to make sure that we're making the right decisions on where to spend that budget and where we could get away with maybe spending less on other areas.
Yeah.
And typically, what you find is called value engineering in the industry. But what you typically find is that you can be very successful at value engineering certain components of a house without losing those things that are really important to making it a luxury home.
Yeah. Value engineering. Oof. Value engineering is every architect's least favorite thing. I find the best place to save money is right up front when you're deciding what the home's going to look like and how big it's going to be, right? Because if we decide to do fewer bathrooms, or maybe you had two kitchens, you're going to do one instead, or maybe it's one kitchen with a butler pantry behind or whatever. Eliminating those things are going to save far more money than trying to save money when you're ready to start construction and all the decisions have already been made. Like if we're trying to save money at that point, our options become really limited. So and
Very
value
true.
engineering then can become very painful for people.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And again, as an owner's rep, what I bring to the table is that early discussion, the pre-construction, and quite often I'm coming in after those things, and so trying to get everyone back onto the same page is a big part of my role.
Yeah.
So as that pre-planning is done, you're exactly right. That's the place that those decisions should be made. Unfortunately, it's not the place that they are often made. So someone would say, well, why aren't those made that way? And the reason is that these are disparate teams that are brought together to create this house. And so you have an architecture team, you have an interior design team, and then you have the construction team, and then you've got a number of other teams. But let's talk about those three as the core teams,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
And there's no structure typically that would bring those teams necessarily together other than the owner themselves. The owner may say, hey, I want to get everyone in a room, I want to talk about these types of things. And then if the owner doesn't stay engaged, then those teams typically, now they'll shoot each other questions and, hey, what do we do here? But in terms of being one cohesive team, there's just no natural way for that to happen. There's no, amongst that team, there's no one that's, hey, I'm the leader and I'm going to take lead on this project. The architect doesn't want to step on the builder's toes. The builder doesn't want to step on the interior designer's toes, and vice versa. So it becomes this vicious cycle. When I step in, I do take that role and I say, hey, I'm the leader here, and I'm going to help all of us make sure that we're on the same page, that we're talking about things early, that we're doing a lot of the pre planning. And if that pre planning hasn't been done, we're going to work together to come up with solutions that are in the owner's best interest. And so that's a critical role that flat out doesn't exist in the current building structure. And that's where you hear a lot of the frustrations that will happen. I also want to point out that I don't think I think the majority of builders, architects, interior designers are honest, good business people. I don't think,
Yeah, agreed.
in my experience, certainly in this geography on the Wasatch Back, I don't think they're bad players out there that are trying to rip people off. I just don't think that's the situation. I think the problems come in when the communication isn't sufficient and that those teams aren't speaking with each other. And so that may be the single most important role for me as an owner's rep, is to make sure that those teams are talking to each other, they know what's in each other's heads, and that we're with each other all the time and we're working as a cohesive team.
So, reading between the lines, it sounds like you would prefer to be on the project at the beginning, helping to form the team and form the team's dynamics. But tell us about a home that you saved. You mentioned you frequently come in when things are going a little bit wrong. What's
Yeah.
one that went well afterward?
Well, I think a lot of times you step into a role, and things are going off the rails. Costs are out of control. No one seems to have any idea of what's going on, where they are in the stages. And the truth of the matter is that it's very hard to correct the ship without someone intervening, either the owner or someone like myself representing the owner. And the reason for that is that as people are, they've worked on this team, people have been thrown under the bus, fingers have been pointed as things have gone wrong, and there's distrust. Again, there's not, I don't believe that in any of those cases someone has deliberately gone out there and said, I'm going to rip this owner off, right? But what is most important is for me to get everyone back on the same page, communicating. And I'm working on a project right now where we met this morning and we have a list of 20 items that are key priorities for us as an entire team to come up with answers for. And I believe that once those 20 priorities are taken care of and we continue regular communication, that this project will be completely back on track. But it's very hard when you have 20 issues, and some of those may be with the interior designer, and some of them may be with the builder, and some of them may be with the architect, for everyone to come together and say, okay, I'll take responsibility for this one. Here, I'll take responsibility for this one. It just doesn't come back together. And so I find that my role is critically important in correcting and getting a project back in shape. And again, in my experience, it's been something that everyone is eager to make happen. There aren't bad players out there,
Right.
and I don't get often very much pushback. Everyone's very happy to have someone come on and get everyone organized and back moving in the same direction as a cohesive team.
Yeah. It's just that when they're inside it, they can't quite see how to, they're almost drowning in a river and you're throwing them a rope. They're
Well,
they're
it's
happy to have
true,
you there.
yeah. They're drowning in a river, and at the same time, it's an uncomfortable position if you're the builder to go back and say to the architect, well, this wasn't in your plans. Of course I built it that way because I didn't know that. And then it becomes a very frustrating thing. No one can take the lead to get things back on.
Yeah.
But again, that's my role, is to make sure that the owner's interests are taken care of, and the owner's best interest is to get this project done on budget, on time, and with the best quality that we can possibly do.
Absolutely. Okay, moving forward then, if someone is considering building in promontory or red ledges right now, what's
Mhm.
one piece of advice you'd give them before they choose their team? Kind of very relevant to the conversation we were just having.
Yeah, before they choose the team, I think it's really important that they pick the architect that they want to work with, and that they define the scope with the architect. I mentioned that at the very beginning, but getting the architect that's going to deliver what they want, their vision, right? And then making sure that the scope is clear as to how much the architect is going to do versus how much is going to be left to the builder and the interior designer. Once you know that, then it's appropriate to go out and find a builder who can build to whatever those plans are. And I think selecting a builder that is able to look at the plans, is able to give you an accurate estimate based on those plans. I think that's the right way to bring this on. So I'd pick your architect first, and then I'd go
Mhm.
with your builder and the rest of the team.
So in your estimation then, is it better to have a contractor on board throughout the design process? Do you prefer that over the traditional design bid build process?
I do, because as you can imagine, a lot of the things that are brought up when you have this, crazy ceiling or this crazy roof overhang or this cantilever or whatever the case may be, if the builder is there and can participate in that conversation to ask critical questions about, hey, what's the design intent? Have you seen this done before? How did you do it? That I can't overemphasize the importance of pre-construction. And I think you're finding a lot of builders here locally now are recognizing that as well, and they're developing really strong pre-con teams.
It does take a builder with experience with that process to do it well. I've done things both ways where we have the contractor on board or we're waiting till later to bring them on board. And I do see pros and cons to each, but a builder who really understands the pre-con process and engages with it can bring a lot of value to the project.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally agree.
On mountain home projects, misalignment between the architect, the builder, and consultants can get expensive fast. So what defines a healthy working relationship between everyone and yourself?
I think one is mutual respect. I think that goes for any business relationship. So that's maybe a little, not specific to building. But I think that everyone coming to the table and feeling like they are part of a team is critically important. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's a very difficult thing to do without someone that's centralized that's leading that team. I think various teams will do their best to work well with each other, but builders don't want to come in and be the, hey, I am the leader of this team. The architect doesn't want to come in and say, I'm going to, they want to preserve the relationships of the people that they're working with.
Yeah.
A lot of times the interior designer ends up being that person because they're the ones that are talking maybe most with the owner. But I think that, again, just one of the many ways that I can provide significant value as an owner's rep, and an owner's rep should provide, is to be able to come in and say, hey, I'm part of this team, and my role is to help all of you be as efficient as you possibly can. Don't I want to take care of the things that aren't related to building for you, Mr. Builder. I don't want to take away from your time, interior designer, to do things that aren't moving the interior design forward.
Mhm.
So I pick up a lot of those things that allows these team members to focus on what they've specifically been hired to do. And so it's a win-win-win. The owner wins, and the individual teams win, and the project wins overall.
Design decisions are hardest to change once a project has moved through HOA and design review in these communities across the Wasatch Back.
Well, HOA and design reviews, changing things that are highly visible, obviously from the outside, would be so roof lines, changing the type of stone that you want to use, the type of exterior finishes. I think those are very, very difficult at that stage.
Yeah, a lot
Um,
of times they're put in place by the communities to maintain like a cohesive look and feel.
That's right. That's right. So I think making sure that you abide by those from the beginning is really important. Maybe a more important question is, at what stages is it too late to make other changes, right? So a lot of these things have to be made very, very early on. We talked about lighting, for example. Making decisions about lighting once framing is complete, it's too late in a lot of cases. because you haven't planned on enough room to run certain types of lights. I think a really good example is hidden shades, right? We talked about that,
Yep. Really
where
good example.
if you don't plan early on, it's too late. Those decisions, and those are almost at the early architectural stages where you say, hey, I want an 11-foot ceiling, but I also want to have hidden shades. Well, that means that you really need 12-foot ceilings to be able to conceal all of that in the ceiling above it so that
Yeah.
you can maintain the feel of an 11-foot ceiling. So, um, those things are very difficult. Once steel is ordered, you're not changing anything unless you're paying a lot of money,
Yep.
because where those beams go is critically important. They're going to support the house, and sometimes you run into planning situations where the design intent by the architect is to have no exposed beams in the house, but you end up having to have exposed beams to keep the ceiling heights that you want because that wasn't discussed early on. And so there's a good list of a number of things that really have to be decided very, very early on in the process. And surprisingly, you would think that, oh, well, we can decide lights later. Oh, we can decide plumbing later. Oh, we can decide HVAC later. The truth is deciding those things early, the guts that you don't want to see are the first things that have to be decided.
Right. Yeah. You've talked about hidden shades a couple of times. I think that's common in a lot of these homes. And we can design the structural package to hide them. So if we know an owner wants them right up front, you mentioned, oh, you actually have to have 12 feet instead of 11. We can design the actual structural system to create a little pocket to hide it in so that you don't have to bump it up an additional foot. Like we have
Absolutely.
done it before, but we do have to know right up front.
No, that's exactly right. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
going to have weird ceiling heights and
Mm.
changes in the ceilings and everything else. So, yeah,
Otherwise,
great
you do
example.
lose that foot. Let's talk trends for a moment. What are some ideas, some new ideas that you're seeing frequently that you think are short-lived? And do you see any that you think are here to stay?
Oh man, I might get crucified for this one, but
It's
I
going on the
think
internet, member. So,
yeah, I think that one of the trends that we're seeing is something called mountain modern, right?
yep.
And it's what does exactly, it's kind of one of those things that when you see it, you know what it is, but
Hmm.
to describe it is maybe a little more difficult. So I think mountain modern, there are various stages of this, but we're seeing a lot of design that would be called quote unquote mountain modern that in reality is going to be something that I feel it already is starting to feel dated to me as these new homes are going in. And what I mean by that
Interesting.
is that it's not out, but it's such a distinct look that 20 years from now you'll be able to go back and look at a home and say, oh, well, that was built during this 5-year period. And so I think that as people are designing, if they're really savvy, that's something that they'll think about when they are building their home. We all want to, when you're spending this much money on a home, you want it to have some real lasting um, well, you want it to last, right? And
Yeah.
and you don't want to be in your home 10 years from now and feel like, well, now this has shifted and now this feels like a home that was built 10 years ago. So that's probably the biggest trend that I would say that I'm seeing and that I would advise people to be really conscious of in their early design stages.
Yeah. So I think things that characterize the mountain modern are flat roofs, a lot of very natural materials in earth tones. So you're a lot of stone, a lot of wood. You might see metal siding in core 10, and lots of glass.
Mhm.
A lot of glass,
It's
10,
true.
11, maybe even 12-foot high panes of glass, 30 feet wide. Uh, so that's how I characterize it. What elements of this design type do you think might not survive?
Um,
Because I've always felt like flat roofs in Utah maybe are not the wisest thing to do long term.
yeah, it can unless it's done right, it can cause a lot of problems when we talked about water earlier, and it can really cause some significant problems in that area.
Yeah.
I think stone selections and the way that stones are applied to the exteriors of the homes are something that are very trendy. I think that it doesn't take much to drive around certain neighborhoods and see uh, the way that stone is done. Um, it has evolved. It evolves, and there are snapshots in time.
Yeah.
And so I think being really aware of that. I think metal colors. We are seeing so much black,
Hmm.
and black windows and black. And again, I, I again, people may really dislike what I'm saying, but and that's fortunately that's not my role.
Right.
But there's a lot of black that I think people are going to say, "Wow, that feels very very heavy black."
Yeah, I
To
agree.
now. So
Yeah, the black trend is one thing that I think we will see fade away. It's just very bold, and anything very bold doesn't tend to last. Okay. Many Wasatch Back homeowners live out of state, and they're only able to visit the site a few times during the year. How does owner representation protect them when they can't be on site?
for my clients, I'm on site regularly and making sure that work is commencing. I'm there talking with the teams as they're working, understanding what problems are coming up, hearing things from the teams that are there on the job that are running into issues that I would otherwise never hear about.
Hmm.
And not that things are being concealed from me necessarily, but it gives me a lot of insight in terms of the progress, in terms of the challenges that we're having. During a heavy snow year up here, how efficiently are the teams working through the snow? Some teams do a great job, others don't do well at all. And so, having those boots on the ground is something that my clients really value. I think they also value the ability that I have to meet with all of the teams that are actually building their home in person. So, not necessarily on site, even, but to be able to go sit around a boardroom, lay out the plans, talk through some things, come up with solutions as we're talking. That can be a really taxing process to do by emails back and forth or even
Yeah.
Zoom meetings. And so those are some of the things that I think my clients value the most.
Yeah, I think in the post-COVID era, we've all been turned on to the idea of how important FaceTime really is. A
Agreed.
Zoom meeting and a meeting around a table are completely different things.
They really are.
Cabot, in your experience, what types of Wasatch Back homeowners benefit the most from an owner's rep? And when is it almost irresponsible not to have one?
Well, I think that again, if an owner doesn't have the time or the expertise, if this is their first home or if they're very busy, it really hurts their process and slows down their process uh, to not be immediately responsive to the teams that are trying to build for them.
Hmm.
And that tends to be the biggest issue is when decisions have to be made, then the owner is not available to make those decisions or takes a long time. That can really, really slow down the process.
Yeah.
My goal as an owner's rep, and I don't know that I've ever not achieved this, is to fully pay for myself many times over. So not just saving the headache of building and the stress of building, which is, I think, are real components to my
Those are
service.
costs for
Those
sure.
they are. But I think in terms of identifying issues really early on, having coordinating the teams so that they can make informed decisions as a group pays for itself in spades because most of the cost that it escalates on a construction project is because of poor communication, or because the right people weren't involved in making that decision. So it's
Mhm.
fixing things, or it's having to add on to things to get back to the original intent. And so I really do believe that if going back to my original things, if you don't live here locally, and or you are really busy and can't invest in the hundreds of hours that it will take to build your home, and or you've done this before and you think I never want to do this again, then you absolutely need to have an owner's rep like me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to land. We're basically out of time now. Is there one thing you wish every homeowner understood about owner representation before starting a project?
I think the one thing that I wish that they understood is how much better a project will go when there is someone that's on it. And if it's not them, then having an experienced owner's rep will save them time, money, and ensure that they have a quality home when they're finished. And I can't overemphasize the reality of that. This isn't a sales pitch. I really truly believe that my services and owners rep services are extremely valuable. And as I said before, they pay for themselves.
Yeah, but thanks for joining us around the drafting table today.
It's been great to join you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing your perspective on how owners can better protect their investment and their sanity during the building process. If you're a homeowner planning a custom home in northern Utah and you want a smarter, more intentional process from day one, this is exactly why we have these conversations. If you found this helpful, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who's thinking about building. And when you're ready to start designing your home, get in touch with Oxford Architect so we can dream together.